Welcome to Around the Gospel, a weekly conversation about the gospel reading for the coming Sunday. Join Deacon Leila Quinlan and the clergy of Christ Episcopal Church as they explore the scripture and reflect on what it has to say today. Listen along, reflect with us, and come around the gospel.
Well, friends, I welcome you to our podcast, Around the Gospel. And today I have the wonderful Amy Slater with me and the equally wonderful Alex Cain, who has, how long have you been here now, Alex?
Just over 3 months.
Yeah. It feels like longer just because it feels natural to have you here. We're very grateful for that. So here we are in Matthew. If you didn't know, those of you that are listening, we've been in Matthew a while and we will remain in Matthew a while.
Yes, we will.
And sometimes it's a good practice to actually read one of the Gospels at one sitting. But we don't do that in church, so we take a piece each Sunday. And this Sunday, we are looking at Matthew 16, 13 through 20, which is chock full of big stuff. But before we get to that, Amy, you just returned from a preaching conference in New Mexico.
In New Mexico.
One of my favorite places.
Yes, just outside of Santa Fe. It was at Ghost Ranch, and it was a conference led by working preachers, and there were 3 leaders. They have a podcast too, and they do it every week for preachers, and you can listen to it. And they do some exegesis or some study on the scripture, deep study. And so it was fun. It was in this beautiful place called Ghost Ranch. And in fact, who's that beautiful painter, Leila? Georgia O'Keeffe.
Yes.
And she would paint.
That was one of her favorite places.
Yeah, one of her favorite places. So it's a very, it's beautiful. It's sparse. There's an emptiness to it that is very deeply spiritual. So it was great, and I learned a lot. They asked a question, which I am now going to lead myself to as I'm preparing for sermons and different places. But when Mary sees Jesus and she goes and runs to the disciples and says, "I've seen the Lord," they were saying that is really what people want to hear. You know, I've seen the Lord. And that then when they leave, they can share that good news. I've seen the Lord. And something's happening in that relationship. So that was a real powerful something I took away.
Yeah. And in this passage, we have Peter's confession.
Yes.
So maybe we could start there. And what does that mean that we see Peter's confession in a very kind of a special way?
Yeah. So here, very much like that line, Peter has seen the Lord. I think just overview of the passage is the context is Jesus has being rejected by religious leaders in the area, and he's going through hardship. A few weeks ago, we talked about how his cousin has been put to death. And he's sought solitude, and yet crowds keep coming to him. And so he's made his way out to Caesarea Philippi, and he's finally gotten out of Galilee, and he can have some kind of solace to himself with his inner community with those disciples. And he's asking them, who do people say that the Son of Man is? What are people saying about me? You guys are talking to people in the towns. You hear what's being said.
What are you hearing? Yeah.
Yes. And so they tell him, people think that you're Elijah, you're John the Baptist, that's very interesting. Or you're Jeremiah or one of the other prophets. And he says, okay, well, what do you think? Who do you say that I am? And that's where we get Peter's confession. You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. And then Jesus blesses him. He says, blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, son of Jonah. For flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but our Father in heaven. And he pronounces the blessing of the keys of the kingdom. And upon this rock, I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. And then he tells them, interestingly, this happens.
Don't tell anybody.
yes. Multiple times. He says, don't tell anybody this.
Yeah.
Because it's so dangerous, right now for him. And I love this confession piece, right? Because it's not just in Matthew, right? We see the confession happening throughout in Mark. It's interesting where the different ones take place. The very sick man with the demons, and he knows who Jesus is.
Right.
And then in John, of course, the beautiful woman by the well, the Samaritan woman who knows and says, I know who you are, and then tells the crowd, and then they come back. So this is an important piece. And in all the Gospels, in the Synoptic Gospels, we get this story, right? But
hold on just a second.
Yes.
Can you tell us what Synoptic Gospels mean?
Yes. The Synoptic Gospels would be Matthew, Luke, and Mark. Okay. And they are similar. They are getting their source. Their sources are similar. And those are what we would call the Gospels, the Synoptic Gospels. And then, of course, we have John,
right,
who's an outlier,
yes.
but oftentimes many people's favorite.
Right.
Right. And
so you get parallel stories told slightly differently.
Yes.
Okay.
In those Gospels. And in John's, though, it's the beautiful. So this is always an important piece. Like, who am I? And that's important for us, right? Mm-hmm. Who do we say that Jesus is? That's the power, and that's what matters. And so it's his confession, but it's also our confession. And the thing that's a little different in Matthew that I think I'm going to focus on is just the word church. Or why don't you say more about that? But that's what I'm going to focus on, is that it's 2 times in the Gospels, only twice,
right,
and only in Matthew,
right,
where we hear this idea that church, the word church, and it's in Greek.
Ecclesia.
Yes. And so are you going to talk about that at all? And are you thinking or pondering that, or no?
I haven't thought about focusing on that, but I love that we go in different directions. Yeah, I mean the word ecclesia means a gathering or an assembly,
right,
that gets picked up specifically for the followers of Jesus.
Yeah. So it's interesting to kind of think about that in Matthew particularly, and what he's trying to get across to the crowds. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because even here, Jesus is foreseeing that there's going to be a special messianic community,
right,
made up of Jews and Gentiles,
right,
centered around him,
right. And I think why this passage is interesting, it's been used in different ways. The keys of the kingdom, for our Catholic brothers and sisters, that's been very important to them for the apostolic succession,
right,
which means Peter got the keys, right, to the car. You know what I mean? He's in charge. And then it has just passed down from pope to pope to pope, that apostolic, from priest to priest to priest. I mean, that's been such an important, and that was really not until the 4th century that they started talking about that. But for Protestants, what they were talking about is the actual confession, right? That is where God builds the church. I mean, we say it, thy kingdom come, thy will be done, every time we say the Lord's Prayer, right? That kind of basic thing that we confess and pronounce and live into. So,
and you know what we haven't done yet that we should have done at the very outset? Read this gospel.
Oh, we should.
Yes. So, Alex, would you read Matthew 16:13 through 20?
I would love to.
Thank you.
When Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that the Son of Man is?" And they said, "Some say John the Baptist, but others Elijah, and still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets." He said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter answered, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." And Jesus answered him, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail against it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven." Then he sternly ordered the disciples not to tell anyone that he was the Messiah.
Thank you. You know, one other piece, there's so much here. I know we're not going to have time to get to it all, but this idea of binding and loosing. Amy, would you say a little bit about that?
I mean, there are different ways. I mean, I think it's about the gates, right? And in some senses, it's been that the church, but I think the key is what the community binds, the faithful bind, can never be bound by death, right? And what they loose can never be loosed by death. That the church is always calling people in to understand that through Jesus Christ, death has been defeated. So I think that's what it's the binding and the loosing. And there is some disciplinary involvement in that and how the church behaves. And of course, the church has done very well and sometimes and not, and failed in other times. But this binding and loosing, I think, is really, for me at least, focused on the gates of Sheol, where the dead are, the opening up of that space.
Right.
And that death is defeated in that space. What do you think, Alex?
Yeah, I think that's right. And I love that imagery of tying it to death. I hadn't thought about that because I've always thought about it in terms of authority and binding and loosing and saying, this is what's right, this is what's wrong. Or there was the practice in the early church of excommunication,
right?
And reopening that community to the penitent.
Right.
But I've not thought about it in terms of how it connects to the gates of Sheol, the gates of Hades. And I love that. I think that it's a beautiful image. And I think that's right. It's theologically correct. And I think that what's interesting about this phrase, that the gates of Hades, is that like gates are a defense, when we think about this kind of cosmic struggle that's going on between God and these anti-God powers of sin and death. And you have an image of a battle of both being on the offense. But here we are given a picture of death as having defenses up and wanting to bind and hold those that it has taken. And yet Jesus is saying, I will build my church.
Yes.
And the defenses that want to keep people in bondage will not be able to stand against it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. So what the church binds, death can't loose.
Right.
And what the church loosens, death can't bind. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's just like really so powerful.
Yes.
And that's what I was reading. I just was thinking that's a power, that's the gift of the church, and that how we live into that, the power that how we share that good news and how we live into that. That ministry is huge. And the keys, right? The gates and the keys, right? I mean, that that's the only way. I mean, unless you lose your keys, which I do all the time.
You definitely
you don't want to lose your keys.
Yes.
but that idea that's the church's real gift is to open that gate, to unbind, it's kind of reminds me of when in Lazarus, unbind him.
Yes.
And that's not to just the, that's to the people. That's to the community there present. And I'm talking about the Lazarus story. When Lazarus comes out, Jesus doesn't unbind him. He says to the community, unbind him. I just think that's such a beautiful, and unwrapping all this. And that's what community does, how we do it. And that to me is the beauty of, again, the church, when it's working at its best, that we're unbinding each other. We're loosening each other. We're setting each other free, both here and now for the kingdom, but also for the kingdom to come.
Yes.
Right. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say the two things that come to mind based on what you've said is that this authority is placed among the community, but it's based upon the seeing of Jesus. It's based upon him being the Messiah and the Son of the living God, because he's the source of that unbinding.
Yes.
And I think that your point about community ties so well into the epistle reading for our Sunday. And so the beginning, which is Romans 12, 1-8, so the beginning of that says, I appeal to you, therefore, brothers and sisters, by the mercies of God, present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds, so that you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. And it goes on to talk about all of these different gifts that God gives. And all of this plays out in community with one another, that we're not isolated, conforming ourselves, being transformed to God instead of the current age, but that it's a communal effort.
Right.
It's in relationship with each other, flowing from the source that is the mercies of God, that we can be transformed into the people that God has made us to be.
Yeah. And I love that piece. This kind of everybody is so different, right? And even in the scripture, I mean, he says, like, who do you say I am? Am I, John the Baptist? Am I Elijah? So everybody had their people they like to follow, right? And so the beginning of the church was one that was not necessarily totally unified. It would be like saying today, hey, do you think I'm Calvin or Luther? Or do you think I'm, whoever it is, Billy Graham? Do you know what I mean? And it's like, no, I believe you, Jesus, right? Or the Messiah, the Son of God. And I always think back to, actually, I think it was Rick Westbury who used to say, we don't have to be uniformed, but we have to be unified in Jesus Christ to do the work that we're called to do. And that's what Jesus is pointing to here, right? Whatever you build, when you build this church, when you are a community, it can't be on anything but on Jesus.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
That's maybe part of Peter's, why he, of course, I want you to know, spoiler alert, next week, Jesus is going to say, get behind me, Satan, to Peter. So, Peter has a highlight moment and then he gets thrown back down to reality. It's kind of funny.
He has like I think he has this kind of a thing, highs and lows, times when he's faithful and times when he is scared to death. And Jesus loves him through it all.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I think that this is something that I might draw out in my sermon is just a sneak peek into next week, that even though Peter makes this great confession and he receives this blessing, that next week he's called Satan.
Yes.
And how I find that really encouraging.
Yes.
That it's a work in progress. Peter is getting glimpses and he's seeing true things. He's really seeing Jesus, and he has this relationship with him. But he doesn't get the full picture, and he has to be corrected and he has to learn. But eventually he gets to the place where at Pentecost he preaches the sermon that kind of launches this whole project.
And he really becomes the leader of the church in Jerusalem. I mean, he is a leader, right? I mean, he is
solid leader.
He is a solid leader. I mean, he mobilizes, he leads, he helps with the conflicts in the book of Acts. I mean, he really does some amazing, and of course he martyrs. I mean, he dies for his faith and what he believes. But it's interesting to see how, and I think about him being that first rock, but all the little rocks that are built upon him. Do you know? God uses that image, like in First Peter. In First Peter, I mean, it talks about be a living rock, living stone. Do you know what I mean? And what are those things, Leila, in Ireland? Where you put rock upon rock. A cairn.
Yeah,
it makes me think of that. Do you know that we all come by and leave something of ourselves and our gifts.
Yeah.
And that Peter, by confessing Jesus, started that beautiful
Yeah.
building.
Yeah.
An image.
And that makes me think about the walls in Scotland and Ireland that are made of rocks that are put together in a particular way and then become very sturdy based on the way that they're put together and leaned against each other.
Yeah. Yeah. And all through when we went to Turkey and Greece on our pilgrimage,
Yeah.
how they would use the rocks from,
Or the
you know,
pillars.
or the pillars from one temple to when it fell down, then they would use it for another purpose and
Right.
building upon, and they'd all be in a church at some
Right.
point in time, as they built and reused, but they all were for a purpose. They mattered,
Right.
in their time and their place.
Right.
And for me, that's good news.
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree.
And this church, actually, I have to say, as we are moving towards, I believe, our 75th anniversary,
Oh, that's right.
I think about foundation and cornerstone and the reason it was established to begin with. I'm going to try not to cry. And then the people that through the years have faithfully continued to build the kingdom.
Yes.
Yeah, through their work here and out in the world.
100%. I mean, when you look at the Beaches community,
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at Beam or Mission House or all these different organizations that help people, Christ Church parishioners were cornerstone to so many of those organizations. But yeah, it's humbling, right? When we come in for a minute, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the people who sat on the Browns porch
Yes.
and imagined this place 75 years ago.
Yeah.
And the lives that it's changed. And I always think when I walk into our church, it is holy ground, right?
Yeah.
But the stones, the foundation.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Anything else that y'all are burning to bring up or share? There is so much. We don't want to unpack it all because we want to leave some for Sunday, right?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, I just think I Romans definitely is calling to me, so I'm interested in that with this this passage. I think. Do you have the Romans passage? I think this may be one of my favorites. This is why I wanted it. Yes. Present your body. I just think that's beautiful, so that you may discern what the will of God is, what is good and acceptable and perfect. I just think so much of that is so beautiful. But I find this to be a complicated passage, and it's gone different ways. Different denominations have used it differently. But that's just what we talked about today, what's been speaking to me about it.
Yeah. Thank you both for spending this time to discuss the scriptures that we love, that we sometimes think we know very well. And I think today is an example of the fact that there is always more gems to mine from the scriptures. And that's what we need and want to be about, is learning and growing.
Thank you, Leila.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Thank you, Alex.